Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's community webinar. My name is Ryan Leslie, Project Director of Community and Stakeholder Engagement. Thank you for taking the time to join us today to learn more about the next stages of the Fingerboards project and learn about our mining and rehabilitation demonstration pit. Before we begin, I'd like to acknowledge the Gunai people as the traditional custodians of land and waterways on which the project lays, and pay my respects to elders past and present. I'd also like to extend respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. So today's session is about sharing clear, factual information with the community. We want to explain what's being proposed, how it'll be managed, and what we'll be testing and monitoring through the mining and rehabilitation demonstration pit. We'll start with an overview from our CEO, Michelle Wood, followed by a detailed presentation from Project Director Stefan Wolmerans, who will walk through the technical details of the design and rehabilitation process. Finally, I'll deliver a community update on some of the work that's already been underway and what's coming up next. So after the presentations, there will be time for questions. Please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen at any time. We'll do our best to cover off as many questions as possible. If we don't get to answering all today, we will be providing a full list of Q&As along with the webinar video on our website. So with that, I'll now hand over to Michelle Wood to begin with the project overview and approvals update.
Hi everyone, and thanks Ryan. I'd like to begin by also acknowledging the Gunai people as the traditional custodians of the country that encompasses the Fingerboards project area. I'd also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present and recognise their enduring connection to the land, its waters and the community. Thanks to everyone for joining us today and for making time. We appreciate that you're busy, so we appreciate you taking time out to learn about the project. Today, what I'll take you through is an overview of the timeline. We'll touch again on what's changed since the project was first proposed in 2021, and then we'll give some progress on our environmental and technical studies, as well as some of the baseline monitoring work we've been doing out in the field, as well as the path ahead on the approvals process. I'll also touch on three other focus areas. One is the opportunity that the project brings for local jobs and businesses, the environmental safeguards that we've put in place, and how the project ties into national priorities like Future Made in Australia and AUKUS. But let's start first with the project timeline, and you can see here on the slide how the project is progressing and what the next few years look like and how we're sort of forecasting ahead. So it's hard to believe that just October last year we secured an extension to our retention licence. And I think it's just important to note that's called RL 2026. It's on our website with a number of milestones, and the exploration licenses around the area were not renewed, and they were Section 7, it's called by the government. So it is a much smaller area that the project has any access to, that GCM has any access to, than what was proposed in 2021. The retention licence extension requires us by government to keep moving forward and developing the area and complete detailed technical and environmental work. So this year we've basically been completely rescoping the project, and that was one of the first requirements from government. We've gone back to the drawing board, we've gone and redesigned it, we've updated our studies, that work's commencing now, and we're embedding a lot of the best practices that we've learned and the innovations from across the industry. We've formed our community reference group, we've developed a jobs and procurement plan, and we're developing a community benefit sharing plan. The aim is to come out and consult and talk more about each of those plans, and we want the project to reflect local priorities as much as possible. And I look forward to speaking to more people about that as we go ahead and sharing more about those plans. As you can see on the timeline, just moving ahead from 26 to 27, the focus shifts to an environmental assessments process. So that's where all of the studies and the safeguards come together. And a key part of that is the mining and rehabilitation demonstration pit, which Stefan's going to take you through in a bit more technical detail today. So as part of that phase, we'll include public consultation, the formal exhibition of the Rescope project so that people can see, question, see all the studies and understand the work that's proposed for themselves. From 27 to 2029, we expect to move into construction if the project is approved and investment decisions are in place before we move into production in 29 and 30. I'll move over to the key project numbers slide. This is just so how you can see how the project connects to the bigger picture. And you can see that it supports the Future Made in Australia strategy. So, we're hearing a lot about heavy rare earths at the moment, and that's what this area is rich in. So if the project was in operation today, it would contribute 7.1% of the global supply of heavy rare earths. And that number has been verified independently by a group called Adamas Intelligence. So that's something that we can be really proud of. Those materials go into electric motors, they go into medical imaging systems, they go into precision components used in transport, energy, and defence. One of the other things which we're speaking a lot about is the local jobs and the opportunities that the project is going to create. And right now, youth unemployment across Gippsland sits at 13%. That's about 5% above the average across the state. And that's not a statistic, that's real people. And we know that when we're out there talking to the community, what we're hearing is what's going to happen when, now that the timber industry started to close, now that jobs are starting to be we're talking about closing off coal mines in Latrobe, and this project will create 300 jobs and hundreds more indirect jobs. And those jobs bring customers to local cafes, work for tradies, and contracts for local suppliers. And we want those benefits to stay in the region. The next slide is that data that I was just talking about that shows you exactly how much the global and the local significance of this project. So locally, it is about economic stability and confidence. And you can see that globally, it's also about responsible supply. We want Australia's rare earths to come from places that do it right and places that protect water, restore land, and work alongside the communities. And that's why we've been redesigning this project from the ground up. I'll quickly just touch on the key changes to the project that we've undertaken since the last time it was proposed in 2021. So the first requirement the government set of us was to make sure when they renewed the retention licence that we did a complete rescope and that we were able to show that we can address the recommendations by the minister. So we did methodically go through each of those, and that's what we've been out talking to the community about. The big thing that we heard was the concern about us mining too close to the Mitchell River. And so we've put in place a buffer, and we've pulled back the mining area 1.5 kilometres. The project footprint is now 27%, project mining footprint is now 27% smaller, and dust and water controls are strengthened throughout every part of the rescoped project. We also have a new rehabilitation strategy. This is also in direct response to community feedback. That rehab strategy has shifted from being native grass woodland entirely across the site to progressive rehab to return the land to its current use as we go. We'll mine in 900 by 300 metre trenches. As we move across the site, we progressively rehab over 22 years. It is important to know it is not one big black hole. It does not look like any of the mines in Tarralgon. It is not a coal mine, it is a sand mine. So roughly 900 metres by 300 metre trenches, progressively backfilled, and we move to the next area. That's important because it shows that rehab isn't just a promise on paper, it's how we'll operate from day one. And Stefan will talk a little bit more about that when we talk about the mining and rehabilitation trials that we'll be conducting. On the environmental and technical studies that we've been conducting, you'll see here on this slide just how comprehensive the process is and how many studies we're conducting. Each of these boxes represents a chapter in the environmental approvals step process, and each of them are studies that have multiple sub-studies that sit underneath them. So that involves detailed studies on air quality, surface water, groundwater, radiation, noise, and vibration. I should say that chapter on biodiversity encompasses probably another 4 or 5 sub-studies, for example, on flora, fauna, native vegetation. So they're very detailed studies, all conducted by independent experts. And each of them help us identify potential risks early. AECOM are our lead environmental consultants. They're overseeing all of these studies. We're working with these independent specialists to make sure every finding is grounded in evidence. And we're investing right now in baseline monitoring, and you can see some of those around the area. Noise modelling, we've put in an extra weather station, so that later when you ask what's changed, we'll have hard data, not just guesswork, and all of that will be available as soon as it becomes available to us on our website so you can see it. And for us, it's not about a checkbox, it's how we earn your trust, and it's how we make sure the land that we borrow is returned to the community better than when we found it. And ultimately, if we can't demonstrate that, we simply won't be granted a mining licence. Finally, I just wanted to touch on the approvals timeline slide so you can see where we are in the process and how long this has to go. So each step is deliberate and independently reviewed before we move on. And that's how we can ensure that we're progressing safely and very importantly, transparently. And that's in line with what you expect, and it's also what's required of us by the regulator. It's very careful work, and it's the right way to do it. And it is absolutely how we're progressing. So you can see that we are right at the beginning of the process. We are not in a formal environmental assessments process yet. We are consulting on what that rescope is, and we're methodically going through each of the recommendations made on the last project, and we're making changes to the project so we can resubmit it to government for their consideration. They will then advise us on what sort of approval process we need to go down, and we expect that will be a formal, environmental approvals process, and we'll know hopefully next year on that one. So before I hand over to Stefan, I just want to leave you with this thought that this is a great resource. It's something that the community can be proud of. The rare earths that Donald Trump and Anthony Albanese are going to talk about and discuss is right here in Gippsland, in East Gippsland. It's a really great opportunity for so many young people who can get a generation of jobs and work and stay close to home over the 22 years of this mine. I understand there's a long way to go with our work, and that we've got to show you, and we've got to show through our actions and our commitment to community over the long term that this is safe environmentally and that we've made the necessary changes to assure you. And we absolutely committed to doing that with you and with proper consultation and proper engagement. One of the ways that we're doing this, and that's absolutely critical to proving our methodology and that we are doing things differently than was done in or proposed in 2020, and that we are a different team and have a different mindset, is through this demonstration pit and rehabilitation trials. That will validate our environmental systems and protections, and it will enable you to see in real time what the rehabilitation looks like here at Fingerboards. So with that, I will stop talking. I'll hand over to Stefan, our project director. He's going to take you through the mining and rehab demo pit, and we'll have some time at the end for questions.
Thanks, Michelle. So as Michelle touched on, the mining and rehabilitation demonstration pit is where we're going to demonstrate design environmental systems and put that to the test under real operating conditions. It's a small-scale version of what we plan to do at full production, built to demonstrate how a progressive mining rehabilitation will perform here at Fingerboards. And the aim is simple. It's to show that what works on paper and in the laboratory and other projects also works in practice, sort of safe in a predictable manner. Let's go to the next slide. So the question is, why do the demonstration pit? And this slide's just going to demonstrate why it's so important. So firstly, it responds to the recommendations of the 2021 IAC report, which recommended that we do a demonstration pit, and that was subsequently incorporated into our milestones 35 and 46. So in part, we're doing this because we're required to do it and because it was determined that it's best practice to do one. And this will then support our rehabilitation design. It's going to give us information on water recovery and water quality and validate that any assumptions around those are correct. And it'll demonstrate to the community that that what we say we're going to do, we can actually do. It's also a data collection and a part of it. This is not just an exhibition project. There's a scientific purpose to it as well. So it's going to build on all of the historical data that was collected over the years, how that relates to the ES findings, and then how we implement through the practical implementation of the pit. We will continuously measure more data from geotech, from soil moisture, leachate water quality. There's so much information that we will just at every step of it get from the demonstration pit. And I'll touch a bit more on that just later in this section. And when we collect all of that data, it verifies that what we did in the lab is actually what we're seeing on site. And we take that information and we will just continuously continue to improve the engineering design elements of the project. So the MIDP is located in the eastern section of the project area. You can see on the photo there, it's an area that's currently used for grazing purposes, with the horticultural area in the background. So topography-wise, it's fairly typical of what we see in the rest of the site. So when we looked at where do we do this demonstration trial, we looked at a lot of different things. Could there be any impacts to groundwater? Where will we minimize vegetation loss? Is the ore depth and the overburden thickness representative of what we see in the wider project? Yeah, it can't be too deep, can't be too shallow, and it needs to be in the correct proportion of overburden and ore depth. And is it located near existing dwellings and other sensitive receptors? Even though most of this is done in day shift, the disruption to existing receptors was important consideration. We looked at surface water and catchment areas, where's an area that has the minimum risk to any runoff or affecting existing drainage patterns. And then, very importantly, does it impact on cultural heritage areas, and can we avoid all of the culturally sensitive areas? So those were the considerations in coming up with the demonstration. But I'll run through the layout of it as well in a few slides. And then once we selected the site, we went through a very comprehensive risk assessment process to identify, quantify, and mitigate any risks associated with this demonstration pit. And that's how we arrived at the final site location and its dimensions. Go to the next. Important with the demonstration pit is it needs to be scalable and similar to accepted demonstration pits. So what's the right size for it? It needs to be large enough that we can get scientific and representative data from it, but not be so large that it is very disruptive from an impact point of view. So we looked at industry practice for that. At the moment, the design for the pit, and it won't change, is 0.6 hectares for the pit itself, and then there's additional area around that for stockpiles and the like. It uses the exact same modular gravity-based separation process and wet backfill that we would do in operation. It's consistent with other demonstration pit practices across Victoria and Australia. And the process method that we use, it has to be generate representative ore and tailings and backfill, similar to what we're going to use in the ultimate project. So we do want to duplicate things exactly in the same way it would be done at full scale. And then that leads into the soil reinstatement and the landform reconstruction has to be in the same way that we would do it in full scale operations, and then we can measure whether the outcomes can support the post-mining land use. It has to show them compatibility with local farming practices, and that the method of rehabilitating and using the land post rehabilitation is still the way that it would be done in existing farming practices. It's no use we do something that requires a new technique of managing the land. So that's important in how we do it, how we evaluate the pasture species and the cropping evaluation. And it allows us then to monitor that vegetation and land stability. Okay, so just the timeline. Overall, this is going to take around 7 months for the up to the point where we start with ongoing monitoring. The earthworks phase is only about 3 months. That's where we excavate the mining void and then start with the backfilling of the final surface layers. So around 3 months for the real for the earthworks phase of the project, and then we go into another phase of soil amendment and starting with the actual vegetation planting. But perhaps just that to clarify, that won't be the end of monitoring. That is the phase where we have vegetation in place, but the monitoring and the data collection will then continue long past that period. So it's not a do it and walk away type exercise. Next slide. All right, so perhaps just a little bit more of the actual of the layout. So the MIDP, it's a stage process. If we look at the image on the screen, the sort of triangular portion in the middle of that layout, that is the actual demonstration pit. And then around the wider area, there are topsoil stockpiles, there are overburden stockpiles, there's a small ore stockpile, and a subsoil stockpile. And the phases that we go through, so starting from the top, we remove topsoil, place that and preserve that for reuse. The subsoil, which is that layer just below the topsoil, is removed and stockpiled separately, because ultimately those are that critical revegetation and elements. We then remove overburden. We take the ore out and stockpile that, and then we start with the processing of that ore to generate tailings, and start with which leads into the backfilling process, where we then just reverse that sequence. We then start placing overburden back into the pit. We then replace subsoil and condition that with gypsum and a few other elements similar to what would be used in the current agricultural practices. We replace the topsoil, and then we start with the planting and the ongoing monitoring. If we look at that site, the pit itself is around 170 by 55 meters long, 55 meters wide, 22 meters deep. And then that overall site that you see there, around 350 meters long by 100 meters wide. But that just gives you an overview what we're going to do. Next slide. But just finally, after we're doing that, it's crucial for us to be clear on what is the rehabilitation strategy and the goal for this MRDP. And the end goal is to reinstate and reinstall the land in a progressive way as we continue through mining to a stable and productive agricultural land use, similar to what we see there today. So the strategy of this trial then focuses on all the different types of subsoil treatments that we intend to employ, and then adjusting that depending on what we see from the results. So it's not a set and forget type exercise. Make sure that we can effectively manage topsoil and leave it as a stable landform that can promote this successful vegetation establishment. So the four key goals of this is whatever we do has to be safe to the environment and safe to humans. It has to be non-polluting, and the landform has to be geotechnically and erosionally stable. And ultimately, what the end rehabilitation outcome has to sustain the post-mining land uses that we agree with stakeholders. And part of that process that Michelle described will be to engage with all of the adjacent stakeholders on what are the appropriate post-mining land uses, and more importantly, what are the rehabilitation criteria? How do we measure success? That will be part of which of our stakeholder engagement process, and rehabilitation isn't complete until we achieve those rehabilitation criteria. That's sort of a brief overview of the MRDP, and I'll hand over to Ryan.
Thank you, Stefan. I encourage you to use the Q&A to keep the questions coming. Thanks for the questions thus far. Next slide, please. I'm not going to talk in detail about these boxes, but the top line is about direct engagement. But I first, to touch on what Michelle was talking about before, we do care greatly for the community's thoughts and opinions. Yes, this project is rich in resources, but the area is also very rich in great people with great care for the community, great care for the environment, great ideas, and full of feedback. And we're open to that feedback at any time. We're only a phone call away, as they say. So we've employed a number of engagement channels. You'll see the top line being more direct. On the right-hand side, we've just opened up a local office in Bairnsdale. So pop in, say good day, share your thoughts and ideas. All very welcome. We also have central to community engagement. The top left is our community reference group. And the community reference group is an advisory group. It comprises of a great mix of local landowners and their neighbours, local farmers, local business people, and community groups. And they've been really very insightful. Michelle mentioned the second weather monitoring station that was recently installed. That was based on the feedback from the community reference group. The community reference group wanted more land care and environmental representatives, so we increased the numbers in the community reference group, and we empowered the group to work with the independent chair in that selection process, and we took on those recommendations. We also have a number of assets in the blue there, our websites, mediums like today's webinar, a virtual showroom, which I'll show in the next slide, and our newsletters. And the next newsletter is coming out in November, and all those tools are designed to inform the community and enable that feedback to be provided. Been quite active in the local media, print, radio, and on Facebook So when we have information to share, we share it. We're aiming to be as transparent and as formative as we can be. And more recently, the activities that we're undertaking on the ground with the various studies and so forth, we've been letting the local people know about that. So they're fully informed, and we've received really good feedback. To the next slide, please. Here's our virtual showroom. You're welcome to jump in at any time. We'll provide a link on the website. You can go there. You can surf. You can cruise. You can walk through, and it's highly interactive. Any information on the project that you're seeking, most of which will be there. Also on our technical studies, our approach to continuous rehabilitation and community benefits. Next slide, please. We engage Redbridge consultants, researchers who conduct sentiment analysis, and you're looking at results there from May 2025, and you'll see a net support for the project of around 17%, and a number of people in the middle that are unsure or undecided. But certainly overwhelmingly the feedback that we receive, it's largely weighted towards the positive. But that support is conditional on us doing a very thorough job of design, engagement, and conducting all the studies that Michelle and Stefan were talking about a little earlier. If you go to the next slide, please. What is of most interest? The environmental community impacts, local jobs, and business opportunities. I'll touch on that a bit later. Securing the water and managing that water and managing a fair balance with the irrigators, and how we're going to give back to the community. Next slide, please. It's a busy little graphic, this one, touching on a few key public engagements. And from the top, we've had a mail out to local residents within 5 kilometre radius of the project. Those that are most impacted also can have great opportunities. We've got a number of drop-in sessions. We've had 6 thus far. They're really informative. We thank everybody that has attended those drop-in sessions. They're quite an intimate format and provides an opportunity to listen to interest and concerns, talk in detail about the project design and approach, and then we've included much of that feedback too into our approach. Today is a webinar. We have another one coming up in December. Thank you again for your attendance. And there's a number of industry briefings. I profiled the one on the right there at the end of this month, on the 27th of October. We are proud to be part of the Major Projects Summit that'll be hosted by Bairnsdale Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and we'll be co-presenting with Southerly 10, or Star of the South, and Pentark Offshore Solutions to profile the large project opportunities that East Gippsland will have a role to play in. I touched on the community reference group before, but again, all these engagements are about being informative, being transparent, and receiving that feedback to continually improve our approach. Next slide, please. We are all about benefits. We want to create jobs. We want to create opportunities. We want to create lasting legacy. So we've developed this framework with 4 pillars, and we're really looking forward to the community being the author of the plan. So we set the framework. On the left, our first pillar is cultural heritage protection and First Nations empowerment, and we're looking forward to working with GLAWAC under the Pathways to Partnerships framework to create lasting benefits for First Nations. Creating jobs, pillar number 2, creating local jobs. As Michelle highlighted before, 300 direct jobs and there'll be a jobs multiplier. This is going to be a very large employer in the region, and a lot of the jobs will be very trainable, and we'll be working with TAFE Gippsland, Fed Uni and other training organisations to develop a plan and a pathway to employment. The third pillar is investment in local infrastructure and legacy assets. We will have roads, we'll have power supply, we'll have dams like the one featured there. With our rail siding, it's also an opportunity to unlock some more rail potential in East Gippsland. The right-hand side there is our community vibrancy and livability. That's where sponsorships and grants and events and partnerships live. And recently, the Community Reference Group recommended to put pause to our community grants program and develop that with the community with more of a local legacy focus. And we're excited to be embarking on that in the coming months. Next slide, please. I'm just going to talk of two examples, this being the first one. I'll talk through the graphic. The mustardy colour on the left, the dot close to the Fingerboards Junction is a location of the project, and that yellowy mustard line is our road haulage corridor to the green Fernbank rail siding, and that's the Fernbank rail siding we're proposing to construct, and we're proposing to lengthen that to add a few more wagons on the end that can travel to the Fernbank intermodal terminal in Bairnsdale. We're starting a task force with Regional Development Victoria, and we're inviting interest on potential demand from other industries to unlock the rail potential. That's really exciting. Next slide, please. Of the 4,000 odd acres that is owned by Gippsland Critical Minerals, the majority of that is let out to local farmers. And we've just initiated a young farmers program and let out 1,300 hectares of farmland, reduced rate leases for the next generation of farmers to make a start or grow their enterprise. And yeah, we're really proud of that initiative, really proud to be continuing that initiative. We are co-users of land for farming purpose. And yeah, that one's a pretty exciting program. Next slide, please. So with that, I will call on questions, and I'll first read out one, and I'll throw to the appropriate person. Our question is, what dust mitigation and suppression techniques are being implemented? Over to you, Stefan.
Okay, thanks. So if we look at dust mitigation techniques, the first technique is just to minimize the dust rather than to try and manage dust created. So on that, the key improvements we did was to reduce the overall mining footprint by 27% and spread mining activity across two smaller areas to just limit the exposure of exposed area at any one time, thereby reducing dust that's generated. We've also increased the rate at which, or the speed at which we will backfill the voids as we progressively rehabilitate. So the target timeframe there is within 12 months, we want to commence with rehabilitation of a specific area as we progress through the site. That's after it's been backfilled. So again, decreasing exposed areas. We've implemented a new mining method called dozer push. It's used to, the benefit of that is by doing that, we keep the material inside the void rather than having all of it hauled at surface, a big generator of dust from the project. In the previous project was dust from haul trucks hauling overburden around the site. So that new method of how we actually mine the deposit will reduce windborne dust. And we've also reduced the mining throughput rate from 1,500 tonnes to 900 tonnes an hour. And again, by reducing the mining rate, we reduce the number of equipment and trucks moving around on site, and then again minimizing dust exposure. That is to generate that addresses the generate less dust. Where there will be dust, we will manage that by using dust suppressions on site. We've increased allowances for water for dust suppression from water carts on the site, and then progressive rehabilitation. That's again the best way of managing dust post activity is to increase the rate and speed at which we can establish ground cover over that area. So by returning it to pasture vegetation, which are faster establishing species than perhaps native species, we will decrease the dust generation and return it back to productive use further. In the previous project, there was also concerns about dust generation from the open HMC stockpiles, the product stockpiles.
I was going to butt in and say that one, Stefan. I was thinking you just forgot about that one. All good.
No. That's one of the important ones, most important ones.
And while I'm interrupting you, maybe you just want to mention the air quality monitoring that we're going to do too, which will be real-time air quality monitoring once we get going.
Yeah. So on that HMC stockpile previous, that was an open stockpile. We've completely removed that, and now effectively all of the product is a fully closed system. From the separation plant, it's filtered and placed within an enclosed concentrate stockpile shed. All the loading of the containers occurs within that shed. Lids are replaced back on the containers within the shed, and from there the entire logistics cycle from the site all the way through to the port are within fully enclosed containers. So dust from activities and then dust from product stockpiling being dealt with as part of the redesign. What we've also done as part of our current monitoring is we've re-established dust deposition gauges across the site at the weather station and a few other areas. So that gives us baseline information, but then during operations there will be dust deposition monitors, and these will work with predictive forecasting. So if there's a weather prediction that unfavorable conditions will occur in the next day or two, you start preparing for that by either increasing dust suppression water, getting the site ready for unfavorable conditions. And that monitoring data, again, one of our commitments is that monitoring data be publicly available. So they will be. I hope that answered the questions, but happy to take further clarification questions.
Thank you, Stefan. Another question. What is the progress of securing sufficient water supply for the project? Is it available, and from where? I'll throw to you on that one, Michelle.
Yeah, I'll tic-tac with Stefan on this, but essentially it's a new water strategy from what was proposed in 2020. And so we've I think the first thing to say is there's a lot more certainty about the water balance. We've estimated at 3 gigalitres. We've got a little bit of testing still to go through the demonstration pit to make sure that's 100%, but it's close to 100% sure that it'll be around 3 gigalitres per year required, and that covers for dust suppression, rehab, irrigation, and operational needs. So there's 3 water sources, and we're looking at the Deep Latrobe Aquifer bore fields, winterfield water from the Mitchell River from existing allocations, and we're also looking at the use of recycled water, which is new, and I think would be a really good addition to that water source mix. Stephanie, is there anything you want to add to any of that? I mean, I think the point is it'll be diversified water supply, which actually, means that there's, three different sources that we're able to rely upon and that, we can actually draw from.
Yeah, I think you've covered it well. It won't just be one of those options. It will be a mix. The water source will be a mixture of those sources, and we're currently busy with investigation work to define the exact mix of which sources. So not quite ready to put specific numbers to each of the sources just yet.
Yeah.
On the water, what plans are in place to ensure that water use during drought conditions does not compete with the irrigator's water?
I'll just quickly say that all the water use will be licensed through Southern Rural Water, so it independently assesses each application against environmental limits and community water needs. As we're sort of just talking through those 3 sources, we'll be using water from existing allocations, but if drought conditions occurs, SRW, they've got the authority to reduce entitlements or impose temporary restrictions on all users, including GCM, and will comply fully with those directions, and this ensures that farmers and the environmental priorities remain protected. I mean, one of the other things I think you sort of touched on it, Ryan, as well, is just the water infrastructure that will be in place to support through dams later. In 22 years when the mine rolls off, we'll have dams to be able to hand over to farmers as well.
Thank you. We have one more question. Are the weather stations capturing the strong winds we've experienced recently? Can the figures be compared with our own records?
So yes, absolutely. We've installed a second weather station on the site. So we've now got 2 weather stations, one on the eastern side, one closer to the western side, the original one, and we've upgraded the software and all the sensors on that original one as well. So we've got current real-time monitoring across the site. I think the question was, can it be compared to our own record? So yes, absolutely. We are just working through the tech of publishing the live readings on our website. So there's nothing secret in there. So we'll publish all of the intention is to get a live feed from the weather stations onto the website, and they do a lot more than just wind speed. It's temperature, rain, evaporation, wind direction, pyrometer. I'm reading this off the dashboard on the screen here. Pressure, evaporation rates, dew point temperature. There's a whole lot of data that would be useful, and we'll make that available.
Thank you.
I think there's a question as well that's in our chat that we can't see, but someone submitted it asking where the office is, and it's at 50 Forge Creek Road. Sorry, Ryan, I'm stealing your thunder. You go for it.
That's all right. I was going to say it's the same thing just then. That would be the last question that we have on record.
Okay.
Very appreciative of those questions. I'll let Michelle say just a few words after me, but I would like to thank you all very much for participating in today's webinar. We really do appreciate your time and your interests. We are listening, we're learning, we're adapting, we're designing through this and many other mediums. Like I said before, we're only a phone call away. Drop into the office Yeah, share your thoughts, share your ideas. All welcome, all appreciated. This presentation will be made available on our website, and we will be publishing the questions and answers in addition.
I don't have much more to add except to say thank you as well. It's important that we get the up-to-date information about the new project out there. This is a really substantially different project than what was proposed. We wouldn't be back here, back in this process. We would not have been granted a retention license extension if we didn't substantially redesign this project and give the government some reassurance that we could address the recommendations made last time. So I think it's just really important that you come down and find out for yourself, either at the office or have a look online at the changes that we've made and how we're making them. I'm volunteering Stefan and Ryan and the team that we've got a team of, probably when you include all our specialist consultants, probably 40, 50 people, who can come down, speak to you, give briefings on anything from ecology to traffic counts to noise modelling, which we've just installed locally at the moment, around Lindenow, I think. And I think those sorts of those sorts of briefings are really valuable. They'll help inform you and give you the most up-to-date information that you can get on the project. And we the door is open. I just want to, reiterate that, and the team is available. We'll talk to anyone, anytime. We know that the project can only succeed if we do earn your trust, and that's why we're really pushing ahead with this mining rehabilitation and demonstration pit. It's really how we can show you that what we're doing and what we're proposing is going to work and will work, and test the plans that we have, and then you can come and look at it. We'll have viewing platforms for the community that you'll be able to look at. We'll have more resources starting soon in East Gippsland at the office as well, so you'll be able to come down anytime and have a talk to people. But our door is open. Our phone numbers are always ready to take a call. So I really appreciate everyone logging on to find out for themselves what's happening, and look forward to hearing further from you.
Thank you all.